All right, here we are. Hello, everyone. If you've joined us on YouTube, we are just waiting a couple of minutes as everybody joins us. I am Jess Bolger from Career Trackers. I am in Redfern on beautiful Gadigal country. I'll formally acknowledge country in just a moment. I just wanted to give a moment to make sure that the live has started and that we're all ready to go. I'm going to introduce my guests in just a moment, but first of all, let me acknowledge country. I am here in Redfern on Gadigal country, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and thank them for their ongoing care of country. And when I acknowledge country in Redfern, I always make a point to say that Redfern has a special place in the contemporary history of Aboriginal Australia, as so many of our first services were started here in Redfern. It's such an important place in our contemporary history. All right, so thank you so much for joining us today, and we're coming to you from many different places, and you'll be coming to us from many different places. So I want to extend my respect to the country that you're coming from as well, and to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters joining us today. We're in for a real treat today. We have with us the wonderful Renee, George and Mark, who are two of the four cast members and director of the film In Their Tracks that Career Trackers launched on February 11 this year as part of our annual Gala Awards. We're going to spend some time talking about that film, what was involved in the film, going a bit deeper and getting these guys to talk to us about what's next and what they're excited about. I've prepared a bunch of questions, and we also have the chat function active on YouTube. So if you want to ask questions in there as they occur to you, just pop them in there, and they're being fed to me as we go. So I'll bring them in, I'll incorporate them as it makes sense in the conversation as we go on. I wanted to start by thanking, first of all, Renee, George, Kyron and Anne-Marie, who are the cast of In Their Tracks. Now, Kyron and Anne-Marie wanted to but couldn't be with us today because of things going on in their personal life. But I wanted to say, regardless of the conversation today, thank you to those four extraordinary individuals who are so brave to be vulnerable and courageous and to offer us such a generous look into their lives. Thank you for doing that. The community that you reach is very, very grateful for that. And then today we're going to talk to George, Renee and Mark. I wanted to start by just getting you guys to say hello. Where are you and how are you feeling today? George, let's start with you.
Walawani, everyone. My name's George. I'm a proud Yuin Walwanja man from the Yuin Nation. I have strong ties to the Baxter family in Brumbar, Victoria, and the Wanganeen family over in South Australia. So, hello from Burdery National Park.
Thanks, George. And where are you, Renee?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I'm currently at Sunshine Coast Airport. I'm up here doing my advanced flight theory at the moment. So yeah, don't mind the background noise as we progress through today. And also I'm a proud Thorold woman. Family and heritage comes from Shoalhaven, Wollongong region. And as I mentioned, up here today joining from the Sunshine Coast.
Thanks, Renee. And what about you, Mark?
Hi there, I'm Mark. I'm a proud Calabrese Italian-Australian person who I'm based in Sydney, and I'm at home sitting in my office looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you all so much, and thank you for, even though we're in the computer and on Zoom or YouTube, thank you for sharing the stage with me. It's so great to speak with you. I also wanted to say thank you to Tara and Tian, who are two of our alumni in the Career Trackers team who, Mark, you and I are the odd ones out. We are powered by the brilliance of Career Trackers alumni today. Those two are behind the scenes making sure that this all works and keeping me in line as we do this today. So thanks to those two as well. So in their tracks, I'm hoping you've all seen it. In the invite to this call, you had the link to go and watch it if you hadn't had a chance to watch it, or if you didn't watch it during the Gala Awards. And we did in their tracks because we had a unique opportunity to take the time and resources of putting on a giant Career Trackers 2,500 people Gala Awards dinner and channel it into something else. And the reason we tried to do we decided to do a film was because what we do with a Gala Awards and a Gala dinner is we bring people together that see the future and they see the success of right now as well. And it brings people together around a common purpose and a sense of hope. And we wanted to do that through a film and shine a light on the leaders who are doing wonderful things right now. It's not in the future, it's right now. And so I wanted to start with you, George. Tell me, why did you agree to be involved?
Yeah, interesting question, because originally I agreed to participate because you and Adam asked, one. But two, like anything when we tell stories, because we've been obviously telling stories for a very long time as Aboriginal First Nations people, but I guess the reason why I really wanted to participate in this event or this storytelling in particular is to promote obviously the positive Indigenous stories that are happening within our communities, and focusing on the achievements of, the current Career Trackers alumni and the program itself. Also to kind of, like any positive Indigenous media, is to kind of counteract the negative stereotypes and negative depictions of Indigenous people. So yeah, I was hoping that, by telling and participating and telling my story, communities, whether it be, Rec Bay for me, or the Career Trackers community, that, at least inspired in one person.
Thank you. And I think you certainly have. What about you, Renee? Why did you agree to be involved?
For me, it centers around three key pillars, I suppose. So identity, education, and breaking stereotypes. So the identity piece, as I shared in the story, I think a lot of Indigenous people, particularly fair-skinned Indigenous people, really struggle with their identity and understanding, what path they walk and where they belong and where they fit in. So I really wanted to share my experience with that and share the fact that that's a very common and normal feeling, and that you are able to fit in, you do belong. And I'm trying to be a role model for people that really struggle with that. Education, to share good stories and make it known that we are achieving great, and, irrespective of our background and our culture, we're just as capable as everybody else. And the final theme around breaking stereotypes. So, making sure that, is that the right one, did I say? Number 3, stereotypes, education, and identity. Yeah, so stereotypes, identity and belonging, they're all kind of interlinked really, but making sure that people are aware of the fact that, there's so much stigma around being an Indigenous person, and to have leaders like myself or George or many, many others in this program guide the way and lead the way for up and coming Indigenous people is just so important. So that's why I got involved.
Thanks, Renee. And you are a role model. Mark, I might throw to you before my hay fever really sets in. What struck your interest when we got in touch with you and said, hey, we're trying to do this thing in 4 months?
Yeah, I think it was 3 months in the end, in the middle of COVID as well. Well, I've worked with Career Trackers before, and I had the pleasure of working with yourself, creating the Career Tracker story. And when you called me, I'd been looking for more opportunities to give back. And this was, a phenomenal organisation from my experience. And I heard the desperation in your voice and what you were trying to do. And for me, I'm a storyteller. That's what I do for a living. And I just imagined there were phenomenal stories there. My hesitation was we were trying to do this in 3 to 4 months during COVID. And funnily enough, a good friend of mine who also works in film called me yesterday. They just finished a documentary on the bushfires. and they spent 4 months in pre-production and 12 months shooting, and they locked off yesterday. And I couldn't stop laughing, thinking of what we managed to achieve in such a short space of time. But yeah, just the stories and having met these amazing people and gotten very close with them, I couldn't say no.
Thank you. And I did make a few phone calls in August last year that started with, listen, I know this is a big idea. And also forced Adam to make some of those phone calls as well, But we got there, and it's such an extraordinary project to see complete. Tell me, all of you, and I'm not fussed where we go first. We don't have to go in the order we've been going on, but who do you want to see this story?
I guess I'll go first. I guess for me, it's the people who I was mentioning earlier. So in regards to communities, so our respective communities across the country, First Nations communities, in the hopes that we inspire the next generation of leaders to dream big and dream beyond their communities. I would also hope that people who are passionate champion and advocates for Indigenous people, First Nations peoples in respective industries like corporate, government, not-for-profit, they also see it.
Yeah, awesome.
I think for me, every Australian should watch this. I think it's such an important story to be told, and a really good education piece and a really good insight into, all of the different pathways that we're walking and, the different kind of, I guess, glass ceilings that we're breaking through, and making it known that it is normal and, we are becoming the first generation of Indigenous leaders in the private sector, and that's a really exciting story to tell to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think I could have articulated this at the time of planning it and coming up with the idea, but what I love about it as a final product is that it is something that everybody should see because, like you say, George, it tells that story of success and positivity and advantage, and that we as blackfellas in this country, we have the solutions for our communities, and we are here, you guys are here, and to see that come through so strongly, not just in your own stories but in Kyron and Anne-Marie's as well, is really so special. Mark, what about you? Who do you want to see it, and what effect do you hope it has on those that?
Yeah. Well, it's had a big effect on me, which I think I said to you, it's ruined me. In terms of every time I hear someone talking about Indigenous issues, I either get really angry or really proud for some reason. My audience is a bit different. So I live in the corporate world, and the number of people that watched the documentary or who've quizzed me on it or saw me going through that journey, the number of people that have come back and said, we need to talk to you about inclusion and diversity within large organisations. And they see this as a way to bring people together and give real life examples of what inclusion and diversity looks like from a business sense. So there's been quite a bit of talk about that, and I think there's a really big audience in the corporate world that would benefit from seeing these leaders and their journeys and hearing it. As it's been said to me, we talk a lot about this inclusion and diversity stuff, but this is the real thing. And I think it'd be wonderful for as many organisations as possible to actually spend time not only watching it, but sitting around and discussing it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And let's now go a bit deeper into what's in the film. And this is a question that I got from folks ahead of today. But Renee, tell us, what's it actually like to fly and to control a plane?
Do you want the real story or the nice story?
Really want to go.
Flying has been a lot more challenging than I ever realized, and I say that in respect to, or in context of, my long background in aviation. I've jumped in the jump seat many a time with airline pilots and asked about their experience, and then I've been an engineer working on power plants and engines, and so many different parts of an aircraft. So to actually get up and fly it and see all of the mechanics come together is an exceptional thing. It's a feat of engineering, and it's incredibly awesome from an engineering perspective to be able to fly. But then from the human factors side of things, it can be quite daunting, particularly when you're first learning. And that's just because, flying a plane is all about being equipped with the skills to deal with emergencies. We are defying gravity, and we're doing things that, we're not meant to do. So, as a young pilot, you're learning about how to deal with engine failures and engine fires, or fires in other parts of the electrics in the systems. And it can be quite daunting, but it's an exceptionally incredible feeling. And you build so much resilience, and you grow up a lot to be able to be mature enough to actually fly a plane and do that solo, and get yourself around the country safely. So it's a really, really amazing experience.
Amazing. And Mark, you got up close and personal to do some of the filming. Tell us what that was like for you.
Renee sounded a lot more confident when I got in the plane with her. She just sounded Ben, let me tell you. The funny thing was, we were about to shoot. It was so cool. It was just amazing. I kept saying to Renee, "This is so cool." She had her Top Gun glasses on and everything, and her partner was about to get in the plane, and our camera guy said, "Hang on, no, I want to get up because of weather. I want to make sure we get it." And I correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, but I think it was your first solo flight, wasn't it?
It was my first flight ever taking passengers.
Amazing. And we didn't know that. And he jumped in with her, and as they took off, her partner told me that, and we just realised that we took that away from him to be able to do it. But more than that, I think when they closed the door, something didn't quite latch properly, so he spent the whole time holding the camera and holding the door and freaking out and getting all this footage. By the time I got in there, it was hysterical, and we were oblivious to this until they got back. And then when I got in there, I had to keep resisting the urge to grab the controls, because what I didn't realise is there's two sets of controls, and one of the tests, I think I had to hit a brake or something, a test brake or something or other. And Renee's talking the whole time that we're in the air, and she's going through processes and talking to the tower, and I'm not sure if she's talking to me or not, and I'm saying, "Can I grab the controls? Can I do?" And she said, "Please don't touch anything." So I just kind of shut up and sat there and enjoyed the ride. It was amazing. It was very, very cool.
That is really, really special. And Renee, what does it mean to be a trailblazer? What do you feel do you feel a sense of responsibility as, very few women in your industry, particularly as, you're probably clocking up many firsts as an Aboriginal woman? What does that feel like?
I guess I don't really think of it like I'm the first doing it. I'm absolutely not the first person doing these things. So that doesn't really cross my mind, to be honest. I think, if anything, I'm following my passion, and I'm keeping very true to what lights my fire. And I think that's the story that I'm trying to tell for so many other people is, do the thing that you love, because it makes you relatively unstoppable. If you put in the hard work, you can achieve anything that you want. And I can only say that confidently now, because every time I set my eyes on something, I get it done. And I'm no Einstein. I'm just your average Joe, but I work incredibly hard. And so on that basis, I think anybody can do what I've done.
And let's go to you, George, and keep the same theme. One of the questions that we got from our audience is, what is it like to work in your community? What do you do day to day? Tell us what George does.
Yep. So give some background. Yep. So I grew up on Wreck Bay. I left Wreck Bay to go to NAISDA, then TAFE, freelance performing. Then I went to university and Supply Nation, thanks to Career Trackers, then Indigenous Business Australia, and corporate and not-for-profit sector before returning back home. So I grew up at a time when my community was successful in land rights movement, so we secured Aboriginal land. But then in '95, we went into the joint management arrangement. So I was there. So I felt the sigh of relief from a community and the elders and their sense of accomplishment, not only for themselves, but for future generations. And I knew whatever I decided to do in life, I was going to return back home. So happy to be home to give my, I guess, professional experience and my university educated kind of learnings back to my community in the hopes that I take community to the next level, you know, continuing the work of the Trailblazers that actually came before me, because I believe I'm a product of their investment, you know, from my mother and father to my community, my elders. So I'm just, I guess, just proud to be home in a senior role that allows me to have, you know, main duties and responsibilities, but a sense of autonomy to do what I am passionate about. So, for example, basic HR from, you know, leadership and management of all HR matters to the development of policies and procedures to work health and safety, you know, workers' compensation. But I get to work in spaces like training and employment for Indigenous people. So registered members of Wreck Bay Council, youth. I get to do a lot of work with the youth actually. So the Jervis Bay Primary School with the Junior Ranger program, ensuring that our kids have culturally appropriate activities that are aligned to their curriculum so they grow up knowing country, to the multiple programs and activities that I'm doing at Vincent High School to address the disengagement of youth, because in my studies and engagement with the Aboriginal Education Officer over there, we have 217 Koori kids, and we've noticed that the data showing that in year 9, 10, 11 and 12 that they're starting to get disengaged and drop out of school, truancy. And these are all products of, I guess, wicked complex social issues. And I get to use my university MBA with a specialisation in social impact to kind of use those, I guess, design tools to kind of address these complex problems. So I get to create work placement, work experience, school-based apprenticeships and traineeships, and Indigenous career expos that are aligned to their actual aspirations. Yeah, so I get to be home in a community where I get to live, I guess, the best life, you know, that's aligned to my purpose. So yeah.
Amazing. I love that amount of detail. Thank you for sharing that. And you spoke a little bit about your elders and that you're a product of, and I love that sentiment and I share that as well. Within your community, of course, you're inspired by the people around you, but when you left and you built a network of Career Trackers alumni and other professionals, but also leaders, tell us about those. You talk in the film about some Indigenous leaders that you met. Tell us about those moments of, aha, now I know what I need to learn and how to take it back home. Talk us through that.
Okay, so in my journey up in Sydney, I got to meet a lot of leaders, Indigenous and non, but it was the ones that the Career Trackers, you know, the program and gave me access or exposure to. So for example, the likes of Crystal Kinsella to Natalie Walker to Michael McLeod, those Indigenous professionals that are just being trailblazers in the Indigenous business sector. And I remember having a conversation with Michael McLeod when I was still an intern. And he knew that I wanted to come back home because he's also a South Coast man too. And he actually said, look, George, the reality is you can go home and try and be the, I guess, leader that is, you know, pushing for sustainable change within your community. And you can continue to be reliant on government grants, or you can be a proper business person and learn what you need to know in order to make, you know, better choices around business and economic development and sustainable business for communities. So those people having exposure to those kind of leaders not only went, oh, okay, there's a light bulb there, there's a light bulb there, because there's been multiple instances where I kind of had those light bulb moments. And it just kind of went, yep, okay, I'll carry that with me in here and here. So when I do return home, I can test it out and see how we go. And of course, you know, you come across your challenges in community because, you know, we're talking about change within community, whether it be at the political level or the cultural level. And that could be challenging, but I think the way I approach business that I've been taught by those deadly leaders is that sense of collectivism. how do we get to a place of collective readiness so we can have a conversation about taking this community forward, and being very clear around our collective shared goal. So, yeah.
Yeah, well said. And that collective readiness is really important. And to be that person that you need to be in different contexts, we have to wear different hats and we play different versions of ourselves sometimes. Not in a weird way, but tell us about the many Georges.
Okay, so when Mark come down, I kind of was like, yeah, let's just do this and do that. It was really flexible and like easy going, but my heart was just like, okay, what does he want me to say? And he was like, just be you. And I was like, which version? Do you want George the professional or George, the nickname that I have in community, who's so relaxed and, and I kind of was using the I guess, analogy of wearing multiple hats, because I think depending on the situation and the environmental context I'm in multiple roles. So, for example, I could be the active community member for Wreck Bay who has, that socio-political power, to the personal power that I have as a Indigenous Aboriginal man, that spiritual connection, to the man who's the HR manager, to the man that was up in corporate Australia feeling really socially awkward because I just felt like I was the token black kid, to the vibrant space of Supply Nation. So and also the George that's at Jervis Bay Primary School, to the George that's at the board, the executive committee level. So depending on what role or situation, I kind of refer to the hats. But as I mentioned to you previously, Jess, I always kind of make sure I have that balance between situational leadership and authentic leadership. So making sure I stay true to myself and my values as an Aboriginal man, as a community man.
Yeah, I love that. And, we were having a laugh about this and we were talking about how it's a very real thing. And many of our alumni will resonate with this, interns will resonate with this, that you do wear many hats. And we were talking about this and then George just hit me with those MBA terms. And it was just so lovely to see that, the amount you can, that is another one of your hats as well. That seriously educated, overlay that you can put on a conversation that we're having. What I also think, though, is that even though there are many Georges, there's also just one George, because in all of the Georges, your heart's the same and your goal's the same. Renee, how many Renees are there?
Probably the same amount as there are Georges. Yeah, I mean, your situation changes, the context changes. I'm very sorry, there's like a lot of noise going on in the background at the moment, but being a board member, in a corporate sense, being a pilot, I'm very serious. Actually, it's one thing that I think it was either my partner or you, Mark, possibly, when we went flying, I kind of get into the zone and I have to be very thorough in all my planning, and the people that I'm taking up, essentially, like, I'm looking after their lives. So I am very, very articulate and very to the point, and can be quite serious when I'm flying. But then on the ground, I'm happy, I'm safe, everybody's safe. So yeah, it calls for a different level of thinking, confidence, and ability to switch your character based on your audience. So
yeah, awesome, thank you. And George spoke about mentors and people who are inspiring to him and leading him. Renee, who helps you manage the Renees? Talk to us about who inspires you and who your mentors are.
Well, one of them is here today, Mark. Ever since we met through the documentary, Mark's been coaching me a little bit, which has been amazing. And again, just helping me get a different flavour for the types of people that I'm now meeting based on the period that I am in my career. I am part of the Career Trackers Women Mentoring Program, so have the fortune of being a member and participant of that program for the past year. And I'm being mentored by the Chief Operating Officer of Macquarie Bank, and her name's Nicole Sabora. Incredible woman, incredible experience, and holds a position that one day I hope to climb to. So it's been incredible just learning from her and getting advice and hearing all of the struggles that she's been through as a woman in a leadership role. Mm-hmm. And then day to day, so many mentors and managers, my peers like George. You know, we all go through similar life experiences, so we need to bounce off each other and learn how to be more agile or how to manage a tough situation. So and career trackers themselves, you know, all of my supervisors or you know, the team that got me into my internships to begin with, our student advisors, they've been really pivotal in getting us through each phase of our lives. And, you know, you kind of have a chapter, whether that be an internship or getting through your degree, and then you move into the corporate world, and then you're kind of setting your eyes on your next passion project, or, you know, how do you leverage where you are today to get to where you really want to be? And that takes all forms of different mentors and people. So you absolutely collect them along the way.
Yeah, you collect them along the way for sure. And it's been so great to have you in that program and to work on that from this side as well. It's one of the coolest things that I get to work on the day-to-day. But what's really extraordinary about it is that we're testing a theory, we're testing and we're working out, what does it take to accelerate leadership? What does it take to get a look inside this executive path? And what does it take? What do you need to learn to be on that path? So it's a really extraordinary thing to work on. Mark, tell us, when working with these 4 amazing people, what struck you that was similar and different about them?
So speaking in terms of compared to, so I work with a lot of leaders. All right. I think we've lost Jess. I work with a lot of leaders across lots of different fields, but what struck me amongst these 4 leaders was, and both yourself, Renee, and George have spoken about this, how similar your experiences are, yet each of you have experienced them in very different ways. There's a bit of an age gap between, you know, 2 of the talent and 2 of the other talent. And you've all been through different life experiences, which were quite fascinating. So there was a lot that was similar, but there was also each of you, and what I was really looking for, and hopefully we found, was you're all on a quite unique journey. There are different things that are very important to each of you. You have different passions, and each of you are pursuing those in your own unique ways. And I guess that was the most unique thing about each of you.
I'm here.
I was going to say, do you want me to keep talking?
Goodness me. I just had to have a drink of water. I've got whatever cough is at daycare at the moment, but I'm fine.
Okay.
Goodness me. Kian, I like that you jumped in there to take over, though. I'm fine. Okay. And Mark, tell us what you learnt making the film.
So, as I said, it actually impacted me quite deeply, and I felt very blessed to be able to actually do it, even though it was absolutely crazy, the whole process of doing it. And I reflected on what I learnt from each of the leaders, and I wrote a bit about it. So the 4 key learnings I got from Renee, stereotypes are more than skin deep, is the way I described it. So you've got there's nothing stereotypical about Renee, and I think even though it's probably been a challenge, I think she takes great pride in not being, you know, your normal stereotype. But there's also another stereotype I found with Renee, that she's such a high achiever and so determined, and so much is expected of her that there's actually a weight that comes with that. And I've seen it in leaders before where there's this expectation on them. And as I described it, it was like there was a weight of expectation on her while she was literally defying gravity in everything that she did. So that's what I took from Renee. From Kyron was just the most amazing guy, and all that he's been through in terms of his life and his experiences. But his journey was one about defining himself, and each leader had that to some degree. But for him, it was his biggest challenge, bigger than anything that he'd been through in his life. And it's something that I felt, and we're still very much in contact with each other, it's something that he's actually going through. he's nowhere near on the back end of it. He's still struggling to define himself and pushing himself to try and understand who he is and who he wants to become. Anne-Marie was just something else. Anne-Marie affected me in a very deep way. And we got very close through this process. She calls me her brother now, which I find quite lovely. She also just assumed that I was Indigenous and told me so, and was very shocked and I think quite, upset that I wasn't when she found out I wasn't. But her journey was one, in my eyes, she's been to hell and back, but her journey was one of belonging and finding a place where she belongs. And the nicest thing about Anne-Marie is what everybody else says about Anne-Marie. And I just notice, Jess, whenever you send something to a group, she's the first one to respond. She can't give enough, and her desire to give and be part of something, and then what comes from being part of something, how she's able to give back. And with George, you talked about the many Georges. The George I wanted was the dancing George, but he refused to do it. He really brought home to me that challenge of living in two worlds. And I had the privilege of actually seeing him in those worlds and the challenges that come with that. And we spent quite a bit of time talking in Wreck Bay in council there about how does he balance his sort of educated experience and wanting to bring it back to the community whilst being a senior member of his community, whilst having to talk to his elders and landowners when they might not have the same understanding of what he's trying to do, because what he's trying to do, like it was a real head trip to try to get my head around. But he does it, and it's exhausting. I could see it was weighing on him. I could see how he was wearing himself out doing it. But he's able to do it, and his intent is just to make lives better. So it was, I took so much from it, and again, it caused a reaction in me when I hear other people talk about Indigenous matters where it's not their story, and it actually started to annoy me when I'd hear people talking about things that weren't their journey, and I felt very privileged to be able to get those learnings. And as I said, I wrote about it and got quite a bit of response to it. So I'm hoping that more people understand those lessons and can apply it.
Thank you. That's expressed beautifully. I want to stay on Anne-Marie for a minute, and then I'll ask a few last questions, and then we'll wrap up. But I wanted to mention about Anne-Marie, and you're so right. The first time I met Anne-Marie, I was a student advisor at Robert Menzies College taking the registrations of the travelling interns, and she'd come over from Perth to intern in Sydney at IAG. And she knew that there'd be two Career Trackers staff members there to check her in. And she bought me a gift to say thank you for coming out on a Sunday. She hadn't met me before. She just knew that there'd be two Career Trackers staff members there to check her in. And so she bought me, it was a Culbardie Centre from Murdoch University. It was a drink bottle, and I still have that drink bottle. I should have got it out and had it but it just, that spirit and that heart that has impacted so many people in the Career Trackers community and much, much more broadly. Anne-Marie's story, like all of them, is so deep and so beautiful and so vulnerable. And so I'm not sure if she'll catch this a bit later, but wanted to make sure that we made that thanks really clear, because both Anne-Marie and Kyron, although they couldn't join us today, gosh, the bravery and generosity that all four of you have had to find in you to share this story for the people that needed to see it is really extraordinary. And that's, something that I'm really proud of you for, even though I don't feel like older enough than you to say that, but I'm really proud of you for finding that in yourselves, because it's so important. We'll start to wrap up now. My last few questions are around what's coming next. And before I do that, I wanted to, with your wisdom now, Renee and George, tell me, what would have you told the Renee and George that was on day one of university? What do you know now that you wish that those versions of yourself could have known?
I'll go this time. I think, first of all, don't be scared of failure. You know, we all experience failure at some point along our track, and it doesn't define you. You know, whether that's going through university and maybe failing a subject or not getting the job that you really had your heart set on. You know, you can create and morph your path as hard as you can, but sometimes you're destined for something. And I think it's just taking failure in your stride and accepting that it happens at some point in your life. And it's how you recover from that and get back up and keep working towards your ultimate goal that really defines you. And I think on that end, it also really inspires the people around you. You know, we all experience hardship, whether it's, you know, being an Indigenous person or going through university or trying to manage a family or, you know, your personal relationships. There's always hardship for every single person. So don't be scared of it. Take it in your stride and keep going.
And that's some awesome advice for any interns tuning in as well. What would you say, George?
I think I might have highlighted in my section of the video that I failed uni halfway through my commerce degree because I wasn't showing up to courses, lectures or tutorials, and being, I guess, slack when it comes to assessments, to the point I was suspended for 12 months. So I guess my advice to myself and hopefully to the interns is, obviously, if you're going to be at uni, commit. Same as sister girl there, Renee, across failures. Sorry, my camera keeps dropping in and out. Sorry, all the way down here in Berdery. But I would also encourage myself and the current interns to leverage off the support of the community. So whether it be the Indigenous unit or the Career Trackers community, that's what we're there for. And then the big one would be self-care. Yeah, self-care. So making time for yourself, whether it be, you know, doing something you're generally passionate about or reconnecting with family or country, community. Yeah, just make sure you make time for yourself.
I might even add to that as well. Your mental health is so important, and university is so tough. And, you know, even outside of university, once you have a job and you're juggling a few other things, it takes a toll. So making sure you're protecting your sleep, eating as well as you can, exercising, you know, it really, really supports your mental and physical health and makes, you know, those hard times a little bit easier.
Awesome. Amazing. And where I want to finish is what lies ahead for you two? What are your big dreams?
I'll go first this time then. So for me, as I think I'm in my dream role for now. So I'm currently doing my master's and my MBA at the University of New South Wales and the Australian Graduate School of Management with a specialisation in social impact. And I think the goal is obviously to continue to, I guess, invest in my own learning and development, whilst being, I guess, an enabler for change, whether it be in the Career Trackers community, but primarily for now, will be my own community. That whole sense of collectivism that I was referring to earlier about collective readiness, to being very clear on our vision of soul management of our national park, and creating the pathway to achieve it. How do we get there, you know, as a community? Because for so long, we've actually been in this joint management arrangement for 25 years already. And we're making some really good strides over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been home with a CEO who totally gets where I'm at. So my job is to continue to invest in myself and my mob in the hopes that we talk about community development, we talk about the shared goal and achieving it over the next 5 to 10 years, whilst also continuing to invest in the next generation of leaders, because that's really important for me, because I want to be able to, at one point along my professional journey, step back and hand it over to the next gen.
So
Amazing.
sorry about that. For me, you might have picked up in the film, the documentary, that continuous learning is really important for me, inspiring the next generation and working towards my ultimate goal, which is to one day get into the astronaut program for NASA. So, first step, continuous learning. At the moment, I'm up in the Sunshine Coast doing my advanced flight theory. That will get me rated to become an airline pilot if that avenue opens up. If it doesn't, I'm now exploring a PhD to start next year, to get a PhD in engineering to support my application to become an astronaut, which sounds crazy when I say it, but I've set my eyes on it and I'm going to give it a good hard crack, and inspiring the next generation. So constantly giving back to community and having a word in conversations like this to make sure people know that irrespective of your circumstances, Kieran, Anne-Marie, George and myself have all had different types of hardship, and it won't stop us. And it's so important for each of you watching today to know that you can achieve anything, no matter what that hardship is. It might knock you down for a bit longer each time, but always get back up and just keep trying, because that will bring more people around you with you as well.
Thank you. Amazing. Astronaut. Amazing. Mark, do you want to give a final thought and then I will wrap us up?
Yeah, unmute myself. Yeah, I just wanted to, when you asked me originally, like, what made me say yes, and I think I said to you, even though it's a crazy time frame, I've got a great group of people I've worked with for over a decade, so physically we could do it if there's a story there. And I believed there was many stories there, and you gave me a whole bunch to look at. And then the other condition I had was, are these people open to it? Can I confidently say we'll extract that story? The biggest thing I've got from this is just how open everybody that was involved was. I mean, these 4 leaders, I think I spoke to Marianne the first time we had a 30-minute call. We spoke for 90 minutes and both of us started crying, and then we were laughing, and then we were crying again, and we didn't know why we were crying and why we were like she just was so open. And Renee the same, and George the same, and Kyron the same. And I remember going to George's home where he lives with his dad and his nephews. And I think it was the second day we got there, and we were waiting at the front door with all of our gear, and we're like, hello, hello. And then George appeared and he said, what are you doing? And we said, what do you mean? He said, just come in. The door's always open. And it was that. And I sort of went, oh, then I felt awkward, like that I didn't just barge into his house, which you don't do that in my house. You don't just wander in, and it was that openness. And then I think that day I sat there and spoke to his dad for over an hour, telling him my experiences in doing this, and him asking me a whole bunch of questions and talking about my parents' migrant experience and him connecting it to his experience. But then we're talking about all the different languages in southern Italy, and he's saying, yeah, well, we've got 250 of them. And my head was just exploding, just understanding the complexities and the depth of, what all of you have sort of been through and where you come from, and to think that you come from here as well, it kind of blew my mind. But yeah, just that openness and that desire to give back. Every single leader, it wasn't even a question. It was more of how do I do it rather than do I do it? And that's something that's actually quite unique. I see it with a lot of leaders I work with. However, to have all of you coming from that same space is very unique, and it's very special, and it's something that that made this possible.
Thank you, Mark. That's so well put. Gosh, hard to know where to end. This has just been so lovely. Thank you both for joining us, and thank all 3 of you, but thank you, Renee and George, particularly for being generous and being a participant in the film, and Mark for taking a chance on us. Thanks also to everybody who's tuned in today. what I just love about the work that we do. And, you know, Career Trackers is, sure, it's an internship program and it's a start in life, and it was a, you know, a catalytic moment in your lives, as with Anne-Marie and Kyron. But what we're really doing here is we're building the strength in numbers to say, hey, we're here and we know what our mobs need. And the more that we can drive that message home, the closer we are getting to that. So thank you for your generosity and your spirit to do that, and to keep doing it every day in the people that you are. Have a lovely Friday, everybody. We will see you at the next thing. Thanks again.